Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm your host, Raymond Bakari, and today I'm joined by the Providence GOP co-chairs, Dave Talan and William Ricci. Mr. Talan and Mr. Ricci, how are the both of you today?
We're good.
Doing very well, thank you.
And it's a pleasure of mine to have the both of you on the show. The first question I have here is for Mr. Talan. What are the main issues that the Providence GOP are focusing on?
Sure thing. Education obviously is the biggest issue in the city of Providence. A lot of controversy right now on the proposed moratorium on charter schools, which is an absolute disgrace. You have 10,000 students on a waiting list to try and get into a charter school and escape the traditional public schools. And the legislators are trying to take that opportunity away from them. 91% of them are minorities, Blacks or Hispanics or Asians. So basically they want to trap minorities into bad schools, which is absolutely horrible. When the state Senate passed it, every single member of the state Senate from Providence voted the wrong way, all 7 of them. So that's going to be a major issue. And if the House people vote the wrong way, that's going to be a major issue also. I know schools is a big issue of mine. I was actually on Commissioner Infante Green's design team that helped plan the takeover of the Providence schools by the state. So I'm very familiar with the work they're doing to improve the schools, but it's a 5-year project. They're doing some good things already, but it's going to take them at least 5 years to straighten things out. And people who have kids in the schools right now can't afford to wait 5 years. They want to be able to send their children to a good school right now. And we in the Republican Party want to give them that opportunity. And clearly the other party does not. We want to promote community involvement in the schools, make it easier for parents to get involved, especially if the kids can go to a neighborhood school by choice. It would allow the parents to get involved. So that's something we want to promote. Another issue other than education is public safety. A lot of Democrats want to defund the police. We in the Republican Party want to fully fund the police, bring them up to full staff, the full authorized size of 500 policemen instead of 400 like they have now, which would then allow them to not only go after violent crimes, but deal with quality of life type crimes, excessive noise in the neighborhood, ATVs terrorizing the neighborhoods, something that the mayor originally wanted to legalize the ATVs. And I don't know about Will, but I want to ban them entirely from the city of Providence. They're a menace. They create too much noise. They endanger everybody. So big issue, big difference there. Finances is a major issue. The city pension plan is basically bankrupt. It's $2 billion, that's billion with a B, in debt. That works out to $12,000 for every man, woman, and child in the entire city of Providence. Or for a typical family of 4, that's almost $50,000 just to pay people who don't work anymore, not to provide any city services. And the really bad thing about them is not just that it's going to go bankrupt eventually, but it's already hurting us right now because we have to put in $88 million a year just to keep it from going even more bankrupt. And that's projected to increase to about $140 million a year in a few years. That's money that's not available for fixing potholes, paving the streets, hiring enough police, keep maintaining our parks, all the basic city services that people expect. And the money is going again just to prop up a failing pension system instead of going for the city services that we all want. One of the other issues is the cancel culture. People want to ban everything because they think somebody did something wrong 30 years ago. I know it's an issue I'm involved in, and Will and I have both issued press releases on removing the statue of Christopher Columbus from Columbus Square in my own neighborhood. When I'm not busy with politics, I'm the president of my neighborhood association, the Reservoir Triangle Neighborhood Association. And Columbus Square is the gateway into the Reservoir Triangle. And the statue of Columbus, which people object to because Columbus apparently wasn't a nice person and he wasn't sufficiently woke for his time, and he may have made inappropriate comments on his Twitter account or his Facebook page. But we like the statue there because it was built in the Reservoir Triangle at the former Gorham's plant. So it has a lot of value to my neighborhood, and we don't want outsiders coming in and telling us that he's not good enough for us. And basically the other issue is basic city services, which is not being well done by the current mayor because of the constant turnover he has in department heads. Of all the departments in Providence, there's only 3 of them that have had stable leadership. The police department with Colonel Hugh Clement and his assistant Tom Verdi, the planning department with Bonnie Nickerson and Martina Haggerty, all of whom the current mayor inherited from his predecessor. And then the one department that he's actually brought in stable leadership is the Parks Department with Wendy Nielsen and Brian Burns, that actually is one of the well-run departments. But all the other departments, public works, public property, inspections and standards, the school department until recently, all have had constant churning of the leadership in there, and they've been poorly run as a result. We see it in public works. I mean, when you have a snowstorm, you expect the street to be plowed from curb to curb, not asking a whole lot. They had one public works director that did that. Then he left, and it's right back to where it is. You plow the middle of the street, and you can't drive anywhere near the curbs because they're not plowed. So, this mayor has done a poor job with that sort of thing, and that's something we consider an issue. But I've taken up all the time. Will, what issues do you think we should be dealing with?
Obviously, I agree with Dave, but I would certainly say, obviously, I would say probably our biggest focus is definitely, school choice, whether that's in the form of, charter schools certainly is the most pressing thing. Obviously, we very much support the state takeover of the city schools. I mean, literally, you can only go up at this point. The numbers in Providence are absolutely appalling. And then you figure, once the kids are in the system, they really don't ever, if they get out of the system, they come out with an absolutely substandard education. If they, again, even manage to get an education. And we also know that, to be very honest, a lot of the statistics have been fudged over the years in the sense that, people are, the graduation rate is a joke because people graduate without actually having attained any sort of proficiency in the subject matter in which they allegedly were studying. I would say probably is the biggest issue because it affects kids literally for the rest of their lives. I mean, once you're out of the system, it really, it doesn't bode well, just statistically. I would certainly say, just adding on to what Dave said, certainly, we're very much want to control both taxes and spending. So certainly the revenue end of it. For the most part, taxes have been generally stable in Providence. However, the tax base very much relies on a relatively small number of people fund most city services. I think it was something like 20% funds about 80%. And then, spending, we spend far beyond our means and with no real plan to ever solve the problem, whether it's unfunded pension obligations, is other, I believe it's called OPEB, other post-employment benefits, basically promises and goodies we've made to various, usually union groups over the years that we literally have no actuarial way to pay for over time. At some point, whether it's a formal bankruptcy proceeding or a receivership or something, is going to end up happening because we literally will not be able to, we're just not going to be able to fund basic services. And even you can already, as Dave mentioned before, we're already putting in a lot of money just to pay for those things. And again, they're not value added services. They're, these are people who previously worked for us or did something else. They probably moved to Florida or elsewhere. And so it's just something that we have to get a grasp on. And I know no one likes to make hard decisions. That's why politicians do what they do. But, at some time, we're going to pay the piper. Other than that, I would just say, certainly just quality of life. We want, Providence to be a nice place for all its residents. And whether it's, the ATV issue, which I've definitely dealt with directly, I almost got run over by one, or, stuff like that. It's just, we care about people who live here because we live here, so it's, I'll leave it at that.
And now taking more of a look at the current state of the party, and asking this one for you, Mr. Ricci, the Providence GOP hasn't really been strong when it comes to winning elections in the city, whether it's the mayoral or city council elections. There hasn't been a Republican on the city council since 1986, I believe, and that was Malcolm Farmer III, if I recall correctly. And the last Republican mayor was Buddy Cianci before he turned into an independent way back when. And the last Republican candidate that was running for mayor was Dr. Daniel Harrop in 2014, but he ended up supporting and donating money to the Democrat in that election, then candidate Jorge Elorza. Nowadays, when someone's analyzing the Providence mayoral elections, there's little to no rumblings about any Republican candidates or the chances of that said candidate winning. Usually now, and it's funny that whenever I talk to other political analysts, they always tell me to win in Providence, you have to either be a Democrat or an independent with a lot of money and name recognition. So why have the Providence GOP been struggling through the years to win elections, and what has been some of the work done in recent years to try and fix those said problems?
All very good questions. Certainly, in regards to local races such as mayor or city council, it's not necessarily for lack of effort on our part. We have run candidates. They're not necessarily always done well, but we do run them. And we do, as a practical matter, depending on who is running, we'll run people as either Republicans if they want to, or independents. We would never, of course, just because I don't think we legally can support a Democrat who was at least officially. I mean, we definitely off the books have been supportive of Democrats. I don't know whose name comes to mind there, but part of it is, we sometimes at a local level, things that happen at a national level have a negative impact on us, and people make, to some extent, prejudgments as to what being a Republican is or what we stand for without actually ever listening to what we say. And so part of it is just really getting ourselves into the door and kind of explaining what we are. We're not scary, we're just regular people who want a better life for everybody. That being said, we are familiar with, that, we haven't had, at least on the local races, much success. And sometimes we've had self-inflicted wounds. I think you pointed out one where we had, our actual Republican candidate did at the very last minute for personal reasons on his part. I know why he did it, but ended up supporting the Democrat a few days before the election. Basically, it was an anti-Buddy thing, because he literally did think his, it ended up being like three percentage points, but he thought it would make the difference in the race, and he didn't want to be responsible potentially in his mind for possibly turning the race in Mayor Cianci's favor. Of course, it didn't end up really being a factor as far as I can recall. But then other things, it's just finding good quality candidates to run. It is not an easy slog to basically saying, I have this great job. It has horrible hours. People treat you like, garbage, and it pays poorly. It's sign me up. There's not people banging down our door trying to do it. So we're often, we're out there actually asking, we definitely asking people to run. We're already recruiting for 2022 at this point. And as Dave will probably mention, many of the city council races in 2022 will be open seats because of term limits. And so we're definitely focused on the open seats. We don't know about mayor yet. I'm not saying it's not a factor, but we definitely have some interesting candidates who've already kind of made themselves known. So I'll let Dave take over on that.
Okay, you were mentioning the last time Republicans have been elected. There was one Republican elected more recently than the ones that you cited, and that was Mary Ross, who was elected the state representative from my own neighborhood. I was her campaign manager and served as her administrative assistant while she held office. Again, that was unfortunately more than 20 years ago, but what makes it difficult now is nationwide, people are more inclined to just vote straight party, right from president all the way down to dog catcher, instead of splitting their ticket like people used to. So people vote Democrat nationally. They vote Democrat for city council or state representative also, without even necessarily knowing who it is they're voting for. So it does make it difficult, but we still have an important function here in Providence, because it's important for us to have candidates out there, even if they're long shots to win, just by promoting the party and getting the margin of victory for the Democrats to be smaller. It helps our statewide candidates for governor and the other 5 statewide offices for Congress and US Senate. It gives them a chance of winning statewide if we can hold their margin of defeat in Providence down. And that would benefit us as a party, because if we elected a Republican governor or somebody friendly, then they can appoint Providence people to boards and commissions and other positions where they have some influence in the government. So we want to win, but win or lose, we're performing an important function to promote the party right here in Providence.
And just kind of going on what Mr. Ricci had said towards the end of his or towards the beginning of the answer, there you had mentioned you are looking to run candidates in a lot of the open city council elections in 2022. In 2018, I believe there were no Republicans running for mayor or the city council. Mr. Talan, I know you had ran for city council in Ward 8 as an independent, but came up short. Just kind of a quick question before I go to the next topic here. Are there any plans to run candidates in the 2022 mayoral and or city council elections? And if not, what are the plans for this election cycle for the Providence GOP?
Sure. It's not just city council. Also, Providence has 13 state representatives and 7 state senators, in addition to the 15 councilmen, plus mayor. So there's 36 different offices that there'll be races for in Providence. As many as we can get candidates for, we're going to try to run as many as we can. We'll do training for those candidates, raise a little bit of money for them, provide them a lot of technical assistance, do anything we can for them. And, because again, it benefits everybody. It benefits the state party, the statewide candidates, if we're running candidates for all of these. As Will mentioned, there's at least 5 of the city council seats are term limited. 2022 will be the first year that there's been term limits kicking in for city council. So, we have Ward 4 with Nick Narducci is open. Ward 6 with Mike Correa is open. Ward 7 with John Igliozzi. Ward 9 with Carmen Castillo. And Ward 14 with David Salvatore. So hopefully we'll put up candidates for all of those. There's, in all likelihood, 2 of the wards, councilmen who are eligible to run again are not going to do so. Ward 3 on the east side, Nerval Lafayette is running for mayor. So that'll be an open seat. And the rumor is in Ward 11, Mary Kay Harris is now running again. So those are all opportunities. Seats where the incumbent is running again. Ward 12, Kat Kerwin, has been kind of an embarrassment with the really extreme progressive positions she's taking and anti-police positions. So we certainly want to put up somebody there. And other Ward 6, Ray Hull is considering running. Oh no, excuse me, that's state rep. But we've got a lot of seats where we have potential openings. So we're going to try to put up candidates there. I say for state rep, Ward 6, we think there's going to be an open House 6 where Ray Hull is probably going to run for mayor. House District 11 where Grace Diaz is considering running for mayor is probably going to be open. And probably 1 or 2 others. Certainly Senate District 3, Gail Golden is running for Secretary of State. So the east side is going to be an open seat. Senate 6, where Tiara Mack is really extreme for the voters in that district. So we think it's important to put up a candidate for that one. Senate 5, Sam Bell is another one who's really extreme compared to the average voter who lives in that district. So we would want to put up someone there. Like I say, on the school choice issue, the charter school issue, every one of the 7 state senators voted the wrong way on that. And there's organized opposition to all the people who voted the wrong way from this independent group, Stop the Wait. So we want to take advantage of that. And again, we're waiting to see on the House how many people vote the wrong way there. But my guess is that the majority of the Providence delegation will vote the wrong way. And we want to put up candidates against them. So we'll do that. As far as the mayor's race goes, we don't have any candidates at this point. Somebody could step forward to have a chance of winning. They probably need to be a millionaire and be able to self-fund the campaign. But, if somebody steps forward like that, or if someone steps forward as an independent that is acceptable to us, then we would back them. As Will mentioned, on a lot of these races, because it's so difficult to win as a Republican, there's just a lot of people who refuse to vote for Republican, even if it's their own grandmother. And so, we're forced to run as candidates as independents there. I know in my own case, I ran one time as a Republican in Ward 8, and then 4 years later as an independent against the same opponent and got 15 percentage points higher just running as an independent. I mean, that's the way it works. So we'll do what we have to do. But, that's the job of a political party, is to put up candidates. Otherwise, you're irrelevant. So we're going to do everything we possibly can.
The other thing, of course, that we're focusing on with this election is it's very likely that mail ballots are going to be a significant factor in the upcoming races, based on changes, either in changes in state law, or they may just do what they did, last time around, which kind of fudges. I would say they didn't break the law; they just kind of reinterpreted the law to fit their own ends. But we're definitely planning a mail ballot operation just to be able to target specific races. And again, while we would like candidates for every single possible seat, we're also very practical in that just statistically, we're more likely to win in certain districts than others, just based on past, kind of, analyze past performance, how people vote in other types of elections, and kind of project it out going forward. And pretty much anything that we do that is beyond the average helps our state candidates as well. And so that's how we also help our state party.
Right. Just to pick up on what Will was mentioning with the mail ballot operation, again, that's a very important thing for the state party. Because, you would think everybody who's eligible to vote actually goes out and votes. And that really is not the case, particularly in the non-presidential years. 50% of eligible voters will not vote at all. And, and that means roughly 50% of the registered Republicans will not vote at all in 2022, unless you basically do everything for them. And that means, identifying people that are registered Republicans who did not vote, say, in 2018, and we know are still there. We want to go to their house, fill out a mail ballot application for them, go pick it up from them if necessary, and knowing that they're going to vote the right way, make sure that they actually do vote. And that may get a statewide Republican candidate actually elected by our efforts here in Providence.
And shifting the focus, this next question is for Mr. Ricci. A big problem the GOP has in general is getting younger voters on board with their policies and to vote for them. Has there been any outreach to younger voters by the Providence GOP in the city?
Oh, absolutely. Certainly in different factors. The current chairman of the Rhode Island Young Republicans is actually a member of our city committee. And so I talk to her quite regularly, Cesare Rivas. We've always had good communication with college Republicans. We've had them speak at our meetings, whether in person or more recently via Zoom. We actually have been meeting every month during the pandemic via Zoom. So we've definitely been, active in that regard. We do certainly send out our, press releases and other information to young voters. Dave maintains a very extensive email list, and we try to obviously phrase things in such a way that they will be attractive to, whoever the recipient is. On that being said, we can always do more. We certainly have, I think a lot of our newer members of our city committee are definitely skew on the younger side, which definitely helps. Dave, not saying Dave's a spring chicken anymore, but he's been, working in the same neighborhood for the last half century or so. There are other people who definitely are newer, and we've definitely been taking advantage of people moving into this. There actually people do move here occasionally. It's hard to sometimes seems to believe, but people literally do ask, how do they get in? Like literally just email us out of the blue or Facebook us. How do I get involved with the Providence GOP? And then we invite them in, and before you know it, they're not only a member, they're we got them on some committee somewhere. They get appointed to the state central committee. Where we try to get people involved. And they said it's definitely, I'd say probably our greatest strength in Providence certainly is our colleges. And we do have the ability, because a lot of them do live on campus, at least under normal circumstances, of getting them involved. And, again, when we can, I have physically been to a few of the schools and spoken previously. Of course, that was pre-pandemic, but, in other cases, we would just do something online. And Dave, I think, I can only think of thing I Dave does is we do have a little league team. So
yeah, Let me, just add on the college Republicans. That's one of the fortunate things about us being in Providence is most of the colleges and universities are located in Providence. And there's very strong college Republican groups at Brown University, Providence College, and Johnson and Wales University. So, Will and I have reached out to them. We try to go to some of their meetings whenever we can and get them involved as volunteers. Since most college students don't have a car, if they want to volunteer in a neighborhood for a candidate, it pretty much has to be in Providence because they have no way of getting anywhere else. Unfortunately, your own school, Rhode Island College, does not have an active college Republicans group. Hopefully at some point we can get involved with them. I know as a commuter school, it's a little bit more difficult, but if they ever do get organized, we're going to work closely with them since they probably are people who are going to stay in Providence after they graduate also. So that would be valuable. As Will mentioned, we're not just interested in young people who are old enough to vote, but in my neighborhood, we're working on young people who will not be old enough to vote for a number of years. Among other things, I'm involved with the Elmwood Little League. I'm a past president and I've been a coach for 47 years. And we have the distinction of having the only Republican Little League team in the entire state of Rhode Island. Here in our area, we have 15 little boys and girls aged 7 and 8 running around the south side of Providence, proudly wearing the t-shirts that identify them as members of the 8th Ward Republicans team. And hopefully when they are old enough to vote, they'll remember their Republican background. In the meantime, they do have parents, grandparents, and neighbors who are old enough to vote who get to see that. So we're working on that. And I know your question was about young people, but you didn't ask yet about how we're reaching out to minorities also, because minorities don't necessarily all vote straight Democrat. They're available. We have put up candidates even in the last election who are minorities running with our support. George Porras, who ran for state representative in the Manton Avenue, Mount Pleasant area in the last election. We have Emmanuel Niema, who ran for state representative in South Providence and Elmwood. Rosa Marie Hill, who ran for state representative in the Silver Lake area, actually in your district. She ran, also includes parts of South Providence and the West End. And, we've run a number of other minority candidates as Republicans or as independents with Republican support and hope to run even more of them in the current election to show people that we do reach out to everybody.
Just to add, we easily have the most diverse, Republican city committee of the entire state. I would actually say we're probably majority minority, just in our general makeup. So, it is definitely something that we are very proactive with, and it's not just, I guess what you call it's not tokenism. These are people who absolutely believe what we believe, want to, get their family and friends on board, and often are the candidates who are running. As I know Dave has mentioned a few. I know another one is Alan Waters, who is already, he did run for Congress last time around. I believe he will be running again. Hasn't made his formal announcement, but he is expected to run against David Cicilline for 2022. And there's a few other people too. But as I said, it's definitely something that it's been strong, we've been strong with, and we want to reach out more because we frankly want to be running candidates who reflect the city that we're in, and it's just, I think is a natural thing for us to do. So we're certainly happy to have anybody who wants to be a Republican who, shares our beliefs.
And Mr. Talan, what you had mentioned towards the end of your answer actually plays into my next question. You did have an interesting role somewhat in the 2020 elections on a local level. Like for those watching, if you've seen the background, he has one of the signs for Representative Ramon Perez in District 13. You had helped run State Rep Ramon Perez's comeback bid, and he had won against the then State Rep Mario Mendez in District 13. And like you had also mentioned, you had helped run Rosa Marie Hill's campaign against State Rep Anastasia Williams in District 9. She didn't end up winning. Is there a plan to try and do that for more General Assembly elections in 2022? And if so, what districts are on that target list? And has there been any candidates interested in those elections so far?
Sure. Like you mentioned, Rosa Marie Hill actually ran as an independent, not as a Democrat. As far as Ramon goes, of course, I've known Ramon used to live in my neighborhood, and he had run for state senate in this area. And then after that, he volunteered to be my campaign manager when I was running for city council, and did a great job for me, handled all my high-rise senior citizen buildings, took care of all my sign locations. And then when he was able to afford to buy a house over off of Hartford Avenue, and he decided to run in that area and asked me to return the favor and run his campaign over there, which I was more than happy to do. Even though he chose to run as a Democrat, he's a very conservative Democrat. Somebody of Providence was more 50-50 as far as the party affiliations, could probably run as a Republican, and someone we feel comfortable with. So if we have nobody running as a Republican and there's somebody running as a Democrat who's very conservative, that's certainly somebody we would help out. I know there's going to be a number of other races in Providence in 2022 that are open seats where I'm aware of people who basically could be Republicans that are kind of being recruited by the incumbent to succeed them, that we'll certainly support them. Even if they get elected as a Democrat, we know they'll vote the right way if they actually get elected to public office. So we'll do what it takes. Certainly in Representative Perez's case, I'll be running his campaign again in 2022 and doing whatever it takes there. I know in your own neighborhood, Ray, we're going to have a special election in Ward 15 to replace Sabina Matos, who just got appointed as Lieutenant Governor. And, as of now, we have no Republicans running for that race. So the most conservative Democrat who's running is Oscar Vargas, who's someone I know will vote the right way on most issues that are important to us. And I'm going to be helping him out with that campaign. Obviously, if we have somebody running as a Republican, our duty as Republican Party officers is to support the Republican candidates. But if there is no Republican, we're going to support the most conservative candidate we can.
Absolutely. And, as I said, we, as a Republican city committee, regarding, official endorsements, can literally only endorse Republicans, but that doesn't mean we can't, in our own individual wearing, other hats, support other candidates. And we're very strategic about what we do. As I said, we know we get to choose amongst the choices we have. And so, as Dave said, we certainly try to go for the most, if not Republican leaning, certainly the most conservative candidate we can find, because Providence has definitely seen, I think a good example, Dave, I'm sure would agree with this, is what happened with the Kat Kerwin election a few years back, where we thought the incumbent had it in the bag, and he's generally been, Terry Hassett, I believe it was, usually voted the right way, and for some reason his signatures didn't quite get it. He missed his the minimum number of signatures to get back on the ballot, and we ended up with this absolute whack job as the the candidate. We had no Republican or independent to run in the general election because we assumed the incumbent would have just gone in unopposed, without real without effort. We're not going to make that mistake again, I can tell you. So with that one, we've actually, especially with some of the Columbus controversy and some other things that she's done, she's definitely on the radar. Whether it's so that's definitely one that's up there. And there's a few other ones where there's just candidates that are just not mainstream, even for Providence. And Providence, is not necessarily a conservative haven, but that being said, I think most people tend to live their lives that way. Whether it's they don't spend beyond their means, and they try to do right by their neighbor. It's just I think we just have to do a better job of outreaching, letting people know that we're there to help them. Again, we'll try to help Republicans when there are Republicans running, but in the absence of that, we're going to help whoever is closest to our values.
And before I just shift to the next topic, have there been any, is there like a certain number of candidates that have reached out so far? Is there any candidates that have expressed interest in any of the other districts aside from those that you've mentioned?
There's definitely people who, I don't want to give out names quite this early, but we've definitely had interest about specific, incumbents who people would like to challenge. Again, some of that is getting the name ID out there, getting enough money, because just saying that you're going to run is the first of many steps. We're not looking to run people to get them on, preferably, if it comes down to it, we'll have them run to run, but we would prefer to run with at least a reasonable chance of potentially winning a race. But it's just one of those things where we are very cognizant of where we stand, within this city, and so it's we have to target our resources. We can't necessarily, we can't run 32, 36, candidates necessarily and well fund them and have enough volunteers behind them and do all the things you would expect expect to be done. As a city committee, technically our job is has to do with the city council and the mayor, but we often do find ourselves also pinch hitting for state reps and state senators as well, because on a statewide level, sometimes I wouldn't say it gets written off, but it definitely is not a focus because they just see the statistics and the statistics look pretty darn bad. And so it's just one of those things where we're doing a lot of different things and we're doing the best with what we have, and we certainly wish we had more. I don't know if Dave wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, pretty much everybody that we ran in the last election, even though they didn't win, they had a positive experience. And I think every one of them is seriously considering running again in 2022. And yes, there are other people that we've talked to, and until they announce themselves, no, Will and I are not going to announce their names for them.
And going to the next topic I have here, Mr. Ricci, the current list of potential candidates in the 2022 mayoral election seems to be getting to the 2014 levels of competitiveness. There are about 4 or 5 Democrats that come to mind, and I believe 2 have officially announced, and 1 is currently in the fundraising stage and exploring that option. And you had mentioned, both of you had mentioned this in a couple of answers, that you would support a Democrat that matches your views and you say would vote the right way. In the event of a Democrat winning the mayoral election in 2022, who would the Providence GOP be the most okay with out of the current list of potential candidates, and why?
I have to say, unfortunately, a lot of the ones that I'm currently aware of are not that great. With varying degrees of suitability. I can say I know virtually all of them personally, or at least have met them. I actually would have thought, I've actually known Sabina for about a decade, so I actually would have thought she would have been a very credible candidate for mayor personally. I don't know if Nerva La Fortune will have enough citywide ID, and the money might be an issue there. She had a very, we actually did run a Republican against her last time. She absolutely eviscerated him, but it's a very liberal leaning district that she's in, and I'm not sure that will play well on the citywide. Brett Smiley certainly, assuming he continues to run, has a lot of money, but happens to be my neighbor too. So that's always a little bit of awkward, but as I said, he was basically running the city for Mayor Elorza for a few years as the I believe was the chief operating officer, if I remember correctly. So he certainly has executive experience. Whether or not some other things that have come out around the ethics issues, I know the state party has been following with ethics complaints about taking money from state vendors and that sort of thing. I think Mike Solomon is probably someone I would think that certainly with his business experience, and he definitely has money, would be formidable. And then I know there's a few other people that Dave knows a little bit better than I. As I said, it's very possible that all the candidates will run as Democrats. However, I would not surprise me if maybe at least one of them actually ran as an independent, because they think that for whatever reason, the Democratic primary might be a little bit too, not representative of the city as a whole. Because sometimes primaries have a tendency to, your most extreme elements may tend to do more favorably in a primary type situation. And especially when you have so many people running, I personally, I supported Dee Dee Whitman in the last election very actively, even though she ran as she was running as an independent and was very well financed. And as I said, I've known Mike Solomon for many years, so certainly, at least personally, wouldn't have a problem with him. But again, what we can do as a city committee and what we do as individual members of our city committee are completely different things. As again, our city committee can only legally support Republicans. Anything beyond that, it's sort of what we do on our own time. But again, sometimes it's hard to differentiate, but we do. Let's see, and Dave certainly chime in on that.
Yeah, so certainly asking the Republican co-chairs who their favorite Democrat is like asking us to give the kiss of death to that candidate. But having said that, I'd say Councilman John Igliozzi would be
Yeah.
the most favorable
Finance.
candidate that we could support. He's clearly, of all the ones that have been talked about, he's the most conservative. You have a lot of votes on finances in the city council where the vote is 14-1. And the one person who voted the right way is usually Councilman Igliozzi. I've had a chance to work with him together with Representative Perez, where we've gone walking door to door together, and been really impressed at his knowledge of how city government operates, how to do basic city services and provide sidewalks, speed bumps, other things that people are asking for, and know how to go get them, know where the funds are buried to get things like replacing the playground at the Carnivale School. So I think he would definitely be the best. If he doesn't run, clearly the front runners, Gonzalo Cuervo, I would say, is probably now the front runner now that Sabina Matos is out of that race. If the two of them had run, they were going to split the Hispanic vote and throw the election to Brett Smiley. But now there's only one serious Hispanic running. I think that makes that Hispanic the front runner, just like that's how Angel Tavares got elected, and it's how Jorge Elorza got elected, because they both cleared the field to where they were the only Hispanic running. They both just barely survived the Democratic primary anyway, where they would not have done it if they had to split the vote. Cuervo was actually met with Representative Perez and myself. He says all the right things. He is experienced. I haven't had a chance to talk one-on-one with Brett Smiley yet. He's experienced also, both of which he could not have said about Jorge Elorza. Jorge Elorza had never held any government office other than housing court judge. He had no experience whatsoever. And it really kind of showed once he became the mayor. Especially if you're inexperienced and you become the mayor, you want to surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. At the very least, you want half of your staff to be people who have a lot of experience in government. Maybe the other half be young kids who are eager beavers and will do anything for you, but don't know what they're doing, and they really need somebody to mentor them and all the things they don't know. Jorge Elorza did not do that. He hired all young kids who don't know what they were doing, didn't know that they didn't know what they were doing, and didn't have anybody to teach them the things that they didn't know. And it's been a major problem for the whole 6 years he's been the mayor, with inexperienced type mistakes that he's still making after 6 years. At least with Gonzalo Cuervo and Brett Smiley, they'd both be able to hit the ground running. Neither one of them is as conservative as I would like, but I think they would both do a better job than the current mayor. I don't really know that much about Nerva LaFortune. All her public statements have come across as kind of extreme progressive, anti-police. Again, I don't know her personally. A lot of other candidates running that, I don't know enough about whether they'd be qualified to be mayor or not. And again, if somebody was step forward like Dee Dee Whitman, who Will and I both supported in the 2018 election, we'd have to look there. Don't know who that would be at this point.
So the way it's sounding for Mr. Ricci, it sounds like Solomon. For you, Mr. Talan, it's Smiley and Cuervo maybe, and then Councilman Igliozzi.
Igliozzi would be my first choice, and he'll be, as it looks right now, he's going to be the president of the city council once.
But he's term limited.
So he'll have a lot of visibility there also.
And I'd almost forgotten about him personally, but my interactions have generally been good as well. So certainly he is, I think, would be formidable, and he has the ability to raise some money too. So I think it's just a matter of it's both name ID and money, and we just want a competent person being mayor at this point. The bar is not high, and I will actually admit to having once I voted for Mayor Elorza, given the choices I had, but I won't make that mistake again. As I said, right now, he's been basically phoning in for the past year. We're not even entirely certain he actually lives in the city of Providence anymore, to be very honest. He is a nice person in person, but he has largely left the operation of the city to other people. And it shows so badly to the point where people who don't agree with us on anything agree with us on that. He's just everything he's doing right now is for a potential gubernatorial run in 2022. I mean, literally every single thing he's doing is through a political lens and how can it help me in a future race. So it's, again, we're keeping a very open mind on who we support. And as I said, may the best man or woman win. And certainly, if you're out there and you want to run and you have money, come and get us.
I can pretty much echo everything that Will said about the current mayor. And I also voted for him, again, because of the choices that were available at the time. And I like him personally. I wanted him to do well. I wish he had done well. I don't think he has.
It's going to be interesting.
And this next topic, Mr. Talan, I had mentioned at the top of the interview that the last Republican mayoral candidate in Providence was Dr. Daniel Harrop in 2014. And as I had also mentioned towards the top of the interview, he ended up publicly supporting and donating money to Jorge Elorza, the Democratic nominee, to stop former Mayor Buddy Cianci from making the comeback bid and coming back to City Hall. Looking back at that now, this is a multi-part question. Why did that even happen? Did it make sense to do with the fact of the matter being that Mayor Cianci would have probably been more in favor of the Providence GOP's policies? And with 2020 hindsight, would that still have been the most sensible thing to do?
Well, obviously, the key was to prevent Buddy Cianci from coming back as mayor. I mean, Buddy, you got to say he got things done, but it's the way he got things done that was a concern. He surrounded himself with people, in some cases were basically thugs, and he mismanaged the city financially. We talked about the $2 billion unfunded liability for the pensions and other benefits. And that basically goes back to Buddy. I mean, he gave away the store when he was the mayor, and he created most of that $2 billion debt. And of course, none of the mayors that have come since him have done anything at all about it, whether it was Joe Paolino or briefly John Lombardi or Angel Tavares or the current mayor Jorge Elorza. None of them have done anything serious to try and fix that problem, but Buddy basically created it, and that was a serious problem. And of course, you had the corruption issues when he was the mayor, and when you saw him surrounding himself with some of the same people that got him into those problems, it was clearly a concern. So we didn't really have a good option at that point. And basically Dan Harrop did not run a serious campaign before that either. I mean, as you probably know, I ran for mayor myself in 2002 against David Cicilline, who got elected to his first term. And I knew it was going to be a long shot. The only way I was going to get elected is something totally insane happened during the campaign, and my opponent self-destructed, and then maybe I could win. But I still went out and did all the serious things that a serious candidate for office has to do. I went out and rang doorbells. I attended every neighborhood meeting I could. I stood in front of shopping centers and greeted people coming in. And, in addition to going to all the neighborhood debates and public forums, Dan Harrop went to the debates and the forums, and that was basically the extent of everything he did. He didn't do any of the other things a serious candidate would do. So by him dropping out of the race, it didn't really make a whole lot of difference because he hadn't even done the things you needed to do to take advantage of something crazy happening at the last minute.
Yeah, I think in his case, it was just a matter of, he thought at the, and again, he didn't consult, I should mention, he did not consult the city committee before he did that, a few days before the election. That was very much on his own. I know he didn't even tell his campaign manager until after he had already done it. So it was definitely I'm not gonna say it was on a whim, but it definitely was done as a surprise to everyone. Because I think he legitimately thought that whatever he pulled essentially would, he could somehow be the cause of, he could almost be the Ralph Nader, if you want to call it, if you're familiar with the, presidential history, he'd be the Ralph Nader of the election. Everybody would hate him, going forward because he somehow helped Buddy get back in. It didn't turn out, obviously, once the numbers were counted, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway, but it was just, it was certainly, if you're just looking at it as like, how do Republicans think, we obviously, we still get flack to this day on that sometimes, people will bring it back up. We kind of forgive and forget sometimes, but that being said, we want serious candidates. We would prefer them to run as Republicans, but we understand sometimes that they don't. In his case, he was completely self-funded. He had a little name ID from past stuff, but he also knew, even going into it that, barring, you know, the deaths of all of his opponents, it just wasn't happening. So, he made a personal decision and obviously stood by it. I doubt he's probably does not regret it to this day. So, again, it was his own decision to make and he did it. So
Yeah.
I don't really begrudge him for it.
And at the time, I mean, we expected more from Jorge Elorza also. I mean,
Yeah.
he talked like he was going to be an honest mayor, which he has been. There's been no scandals in his administration, but we really thought, I mean, he was a nice guy and he would do a good job. He ran on a platform of one Providence where everybody would be involved and invited to get involved. And, we thought that would include Republicans too. Boy, were we wrong about that. I mean, he has not reached out to anybody other than his inner circle in the time that he's been mayor, and it's been a disappointment. But at the time, we really expected a lot better from him.
Great.
And just a quick follow-up, looking for a yes or no answer for the both of you. Looking at it with 2020 hindsight, was it the most sensible thing to do?
Do you mean about
Dr. Daniel Harrop supporting Elorza at the end and donating to his campaign and saying, my vote is for Elorza?
For him personally, I would say yes. I think given what he knew at that time, yes. Did it make a difference? No. So
same answer.
And shifting the focus, Mr. Ricci, looking at the whole situation in terms of the Providence GOP's chances of ever being able to have a major comeback and a big rebound, it seems like something that would be very tough to try and do. However, anything is possible. Any election is winnable, and it takes a lot of dedication and a little bit of hard work. We've seen states like Georgia go from solid red to now toss up borderline purple territory with the likes of grassroots and fundraising and campaigning efforts from the likes of Stacey Abrams and many other organizations. Where do you see the direction for the Providence GOP going forward, and what could be in the way of the potential rebound?
But certainly, I always jokingly say we have plenty of growth potential, but we do, as I said, we regularly meet. We add new members at almost every meeting. We've been very, engaged with, whether it's press releases. I know Dave largely wrote a recent letter to the editor. I know it was in the Providence Journal, our opinion piece actually. We've been on multiple television shows, so we're definitely out there, trying to put our brand forward. That being said, we definitely, given that we have so much territory to cover and so little at the moment with which to build it with, whether that's financially or just people, we definitely target our, target what we do, as best as possible. We're very practical. That's probably the best way I could phrase it. As I said, this didn't happen overnight. I could look back, when it's 50 years, 100 years, whatever it is, I'm sure at some point in the far distant past, the Providence GOP was probably dominating, local politics, and, the Democrats were on the outskirts. But, the way I always look at when I talk to people is, these people have been in power for how many decades now, and what have you gotten in return? Basically a city that can't fund fund basic operations. It has really no future financially, but with the possibility of a receivership. Kids literally are not educated. It is just appalling. I read the John Hopkins report, and it pretty much confirmed everything I thought and worse. I knew that they were bad because, to be very honest, anyone who can afford not to send their kids to Providence public schools don't. I literally live across the street from Wheeler School, so it's, we're just very, as I said, this didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be resolved overnight, but we are willing to work with, anyone who's willing to work with us, whether it's, other Republicans, independents, or at least conservative leaning Democrats. We've always tried to build good relations with people. And frankly, just convince people, we're not scary. It's we're just regular people. We're trying to do as best we can for the city, and we're looking for people who share our ideals.
Yeah, and basically, I think our philosophy needs to be that you can't win if you don't get in the game, and so we need to be out there putting up candidates, promoting issues, and you never know when things are going to break the right way. Certainly, the school issue. With every Democrat voting the wrong way on this charter school issue, that's something that offends tens of thousands of people. Does it offend them enough that they're willing to consider voting for a Republican who supports their children against a Democrat who's voting against their children? Who knows? But you got to give it a try. So I think there's an opportunity there. And, you know, when you have a candidate on the ballot, you never know what's going to happen. Just look at our neighboring city of Warwick, where Frank Picozzi jumped in the race as an independent, basically with Republican support. Nobody thought he had a chance. And the incumbent mayor, Joe Solomon, essentially self-destructed. And Picozzi walked in and became the mayor. The same thing could happen in Providence. Don't know that it will, but you got to have people there to take advantage of it just in case. And that's our intention to do that. And, you know, and if it doesn't happen, at the very least, we want to get as many votes as possible for our Republican statewide candidates that we could make the difference whether they win or lose. So we got a job to do, and we're going to do it in 2022.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I can't emphasize that enough. It's although we do focus on city races, you know, whether it's city council, mayor, or the state reps and senators here, we definitely have, because Democrats historically, at least over the last several decades, have well overperformed in Providence. You know, if they get 90% of the vote, whatever it might be, we can just get them down to 80%. That 10% differential in a city like Providence can literally throw a statewide election, and that's people. I think understand they have to keep performing at a 90-95% level consistently to get the numbers that they have on a statewide, statewide. So it's definitely a thing that we both have been off. Dave still is the second vice chair of the state party. I was actually the state party secretary until last week. My term finally expired, but we're both very actively involved at the state level as well as the city level. So we definitely have played dual roles in trying to do strategy.
And taking a step away from the political topics, my final question is one that I ask everyone here on the show to keep tradition. And this question I'll ask the both of you. In your opinions, what do the both of you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Will, you can take that first.
Unfortunately, nothing good. Other than people know us as being a small state, assuming they know we're a state, I would say embracing mediocrity. We've had a tremendous number of what we'll call solvable issues that have not been solved over the years, basically because people just keep voting the same people in because either, they know the guy personally or whatever it might be. And they don't ever seem, the electorate, there seems to be a disconnect between the people who they vote for versus what actually ends up happening. And you wonder why our city, state, when compared to both our neighboring states, where you look at Massachusetts as the #1 public school system in the country. And I dare say we're pretty much towards the bottom in Rhode Island, if you average it out. Taxes to, spending, quality of government. Frankly, we're probably known for our, I hate to say corruption, whether it's, some people know about Plunder Dome or, go back a few years, where you had the Dupree scandals. But there were definitely people knew Rhode Island for not having a government that was particularly honest. I remember there's literally something from the book. I think it was Lincoln Steffens wrote it. It was called A State for Sale. That was written in the very early 1900s, and it's probably still true today. It was basically that if you had enough money, you could just buy, pretty much just buy your way through. And I hate to say, it's still to some extent true. So hopefully we can change that perception. But I think it's going to have to take the electorate willing to vote for people who maybe have a somewhat different outlook than they have. It's just, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Okay, and obviously, the ocean state is the first thing that will come to mind, but my answer is going to be that Rhode Island is small in a good sense. Talking about politics, I think it's really neat in Rhode Island that our state is so small that it's no big deal for somebody to get to talk to the governor or the congressman or the U.S. senator and not think anything at all of it. Your local officials, they all represent such small jurisdictions that, again, you kind of expect to meet these people in person. And we take that for granted here in Rhode Island. But I know my experience when I was in the Army, I was stationed in California and Los Angeles. And while I was there, I got to go to some of the meetings of the college Republicans at UCLA. And I remember one time we were there, they were so excited because the governor of California at that time, Ronald Reagan, was going to speak to them by closed circuit TV at one of their meetings from 400 miles away in Sacramento. And they were all so excited about that. And I was thinking, you got to be kidding me. If I was back in Rhode Island and the governor said he was going to talk to us by closed circuit TV instead of in person, we would laugh him out of the place. So, you know, we really take that for granted. I mean, even the local offices there in Los Angeles, a member of the county board of supervisors actually represented more people than the governor of the state of Rhode Island represented. So I think that's a really good thing. I mean, you know, we talk about, oh, you got to know a guy to get something done, but it's also a really good thing that if you want to talk to somebody, they're available and they kind of expect to hear from you. You know, that can be a very good thing. And in most cases, I think it is.
Just to add on to your point, it is true, like we are so small that you could literally end up running into mayors and governors at a grocery store. At my job, I've literally seen the Senate president multiple times, Senate President Ruggiero. I've seen Mayor Diosa. I've seen a couple candidates that have been running for elections, a couple of council people at another store I usually shop at. I've seen Mayor Elorza a couple times. I've seen Governor Raimondo in a grocery store a couple times. It is, to add to that statement for those watching, it is very true. Rhode Island is such a close-knit community that you can literally run into your governor in a grocery store. And they're always open to talk to you. Like, I've literally had a political conversation while cashing out the Senate president of our state. And I just don't think that you might have that luxury in a state like Texas where it's so big that it might be virtually impossible to run into them.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had any number of, you know, I've known current Governor McKee since he was obviously previously mayor of Cumberland, but, you know, and Gina Raimondo, you know, I actually worked for her first opponent for general treasurer back in 2010. So, you know, we've definitely, it's very interesting because you know these people from television mainly, but, you know, but they often will know you. It's like, oh, hello, Will, how are you doing? You know, it's like nothing at all. But no, it is probably one of the positive benefits. At the same time, I think that familiarity to some extent also makes it hard to criticize people when you know them so well. So that is definitely something there.
It certainly is a close-knit community, and like you had mentioned, you know, I recall even sometimes if I interview somebody twice, if I had interviewed them when I was working on the documentaries for the C-SPAN student camp contest, and they remember you, and that is another true statement. Mr. Ricci and Mr. Talan, thank you once again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure of mine to have you on, and thank you once again for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV, or even reading the political profile article on the Anchor. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below along with the post notification bell icon to the right of it. Or if you want to read any of the future political profiles articles, please visit anchorweb.org. I'm Ray Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.